Movement shooters are the most bombastic form of FPS, and I kinda love it. I mean, shooters are already pretty awesome on their own, but giving players the ability to move faster than Fredbear in that one FNAF fan game really enhances the experience, I'd say. But if you want to try some for yourself, there's like a bajillion out there, and it's all very overwhelming. That's a real number, trust me. So for the sake of simplicity, I made a big list of movement shooters and boiled it down to 3 absolute bangers. Starting with the one you most definitely clicked on this for, wait, hold on, sorry. The title of the game is in full caps, so I just, I have to really enunciate it, so hold on. ULTRAKILL is the movement shooter, offering both one of the fastest and most dynamic movesets in gaming, while also boasting one of the craziest combat systems I think I've ever seen. In ULTRAKILL, you play as V1, a robot, who instead of running on like, oil or something, I don't know, they run on blood. And the game reflects this premise in almost every aspect. The way you actually heal in-game is by dealing close-range damage to soak in their blood. This system for healing actually forces you to play dangerously, while also preventing players from sitting in the corner shooting enemies like a little rat. You're actually forced to crawl out of your little turtle shell and experiment with its movement mechanics. Speaking of movement mechanics, the movement in this game is actually wild. You can dash, slide, slam, long jump, slam storage, wall jump. What is going on? It's kind of overwhelming at first, but the real fun comes from learning how to chain the moves together and seeing how they all complement each other during gameplay. Because of how expansive and addictively satisfying ULTRAKILL's movement is, it's built a dedicated community of hardcore speedrunners, me included. Yeah, that's right. You're looking at the 39th fastest player of 0-1 in the world. Not only does ULTRAKILL's movement complement the levels, but it also complements the combat. To put it simply, ULTRAKILL's gunplay feels like crack in video game form. You have 5 base guns, each with 3 variants that change how they work, and somehow, they all perfectly interact with each other to create combos so powerful that it honestly kind of scares me. ULTRAKILL hands down has the most creative and satisfying guns in any shooter I've ever played. What, you don't believe me? I could spend literal hours gushing about how cool the combat system in this game is, but because I actually want this video to release, I'm gonna do a quick lightning round mentioning a bunch of the things I like. Alright, here we go. You have a shotgun variant with an attached chainsaw. You can hold right click to shoot it off, and when it retracts, you can parry it to punch it back out again. You have a red arm that when punching with it, shoots out shotgun shells at every angle, and you can physically see V1 reloading his arm. There's an upgrade that you can find in levels that gives you dual wielding for a short time, and if you manage to have 2 active at the same time, you just grow another arm. Additionally, if you use the revolver variant that spins around on your finger and do it with 3 arms, you can literally helicopter through the air. There's a rocket launcher that you can pause in time, jump on, unfreeze, and then use WASD to surf on the rocket through the air. And the magnum opus of all, the Ricochet. You've probably heard all about the coins in ULTRAKILL, and for good reason. But unless you've been living under a rock, here's the gist. With the Marksman revolver equipped, you can right-click to flick a coin in the air. Shooting that coin will cause your bullet to bounce off it and ricochet into the nearest enemy. ULTRAKILL takes this concept and pushes it to the max. You can flick multiple coins up and shoot one of them to have them all bounce off each other and multiply the damage, or you can flick one and use a rail cannon on the coin to reflect it into the enemy and deal even more damage. And I'm not even scratching the surface of what's possible with the coin. Now this segment has already been long enough, but before I go, I want to highlight probably my favorite combat move of all, the parry. ULTRAKILL perfected parrying. We've peaked. Anybody who says otherwise is lying and should be burned at the stake. Not only does parrying just feel juicy as hell, but you can parry virtually anything in ULTRAKILL. You can parry projectiles, melee attacks, giant hands, high five bro. But the coolest of all in my opinion is when you shoot your shotgun and parry your own bullets to turn them explosive. Hakita, you madman! If you want any more proof that ULTRAKILL is worth your time, just take a look at my Steam replay. I might have a problem. Now for another game that's surprisingly on brand for the whole heaven and hell theme, Neon White. Here's a little fun fact. Neon White was made by the same guy who made Tattletale.
Give me a treat.
Yeah.
Give me a treat.
Neon White is probably the most unique game I'll talk about today, being a blend of the movement shooter and deck builder genres. How the hell does that work? I can clearly hear you asking. See that over there? That right there is a soul card. The way each soul card works is that you can either left click to use them as a weapon, or right click to discard them, in exchange for a sweet parkour move. Each one of them has their own part to play in the movement kit, with each being pretty lackluster on their own, but really starting to shine when you figure out how to chain them all together. They actually start to get pretty creative with them too. Like, of course you start out with the basic stuff, like a pistol that contains a double jump, but eventually, you start getting rocket launchers that act as grappling hooks, shotguns that give you an omnidirectional dash, and all other kinds of wacky stuff. Each level premise is deceptively simple. Pick up cards, kill all the demons, and get to the exit as quickly as possible. Wait, so you're trying to tell me that I'm killing black enemies because they don't deserve to enter heaven? I mean, I guess that's interesting. Neon White takes this simple premise and violently twists and deforms it into something straight up hypnotizing. Like every good speedrun game, you've got the arse medal, the fine medal, the good medal, and the awesome medal. And achieving an ace medal on a level that you worked hard to optimize your speedrun time on gives me such a euphoric high that drugs could never replicate. Speedrunning is one of those hobbies that people look at and say, seems fun, got better things to do. Mostly because of how long you need to spend grinding for even an ounce of satisfaction. Well, Neon White said screw that, and made probably one of the most unwelcoming parts of gaming accessible to the common man. Instead of spending hours on one run of the entire game, with the ever-looming threat of messing up and having to start way back at the beginning, Neon White has you booking it through levels that take less than 30 seconds. Because of their short length, it's easy to assume that there isn't much room for player expression, but that couldn't be further from the truth. Each and every level is jam-packed with skips, and there's almost always another way to tackle each level. Pair that with the endless ways that you can use the many soul cards, and you've got a game that doesn't just want you to beat it, but it wants you to master it. Neon White's focus on searching every corner of a level to find a shortcut, and finding one that cuts your playtime in half, gives me a feeling almost comparable to solving a puzzle in a puzzle game. But without all the stuff that makes me remember why I dislike puzzle games. It's because I'm stupid. I rarely play a game that has me so hooked that I instantly want to master each and every level. But Neon White pulls that off and more. Something interesting that I noticed about Neon White when comparing it to other games like ULTRAKILL is that they both manage to invoke a feeling of speed, but in very different ways. ULTRAKILL feels fast because it is fast. Its movement allowing you to reach top speeds in very little time at all. Neon White, on the other hand, is actually pretty controlled. More than you'd expect for a game praised so much for its speedy gameplay. Because Neon White is a game that feels fast rather than being fast. Being able to chain all of the soul card moves together makes you feel like an absolute madman, while still being relatively slow in terms of actual movement speed. All of this combined makes Neon White one of my favorite speedrunning games I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing, even motivating me enough to achieve an ace medal on every level the game has to offer. There's also the story.
But you were once a great teacher, Mr. White.
Now, the two games I've talked about so far have been really popular single-player games, so I knew I wanted to highlight something a little bit different. And what fits the bill better than a tiny little indie game called STRAFTAT? STRAFTAT is a little underground arena shooter developed by the Lemitri Bros. Even though STRAFTAT's only been out since late 2024, it's built a dedicated and consistent player base, with around 850 concurrent plays at the time of writing this script. That's not for no reason either, because STRAFTAT quickly became one of my favorite shooters to play with friends. It's simple. Drop into one of the hundreds of maps available, and kill that guy over there before he grabs the trusty Oklahoma and uses it to turn you into a meat puddle. To make this part of the video a whole lot more cohesive, I'm just gonna go ahead and break it up into 4 individual parts. Right off the bat, let's talk movement. The parkour platforming in STRAFTAT ticks all the boxes. You've got a sprint, a wall jump, and a kick-ass slide. You can combo and chain these moves to your heart's content, which opens up a massive skill ceiling for players who want to get cracked at the game. I've clocked in about 45 hours on the game, which basically means I'm the best STRAFTAT player to ever grace the earth. The movement is surprisingly dynamic. Additionally, some guns have a nasty amount of recoil, and let you boost up to places that you were never supposed to reach. Some guns can also just change your movement speed, like how the Bayshore just absolutely cranks everything up to Mach 12. While we're on the topic of guns, let's move on to the weapons. Holy crap. That's all I can say because STRAFTAT has probably one of the most dynamic and varied arsenals I think I've ever seen. You've got the Phoenix. It's a sick-ass flamethrower. You've got the Prophet, which shoots black holes that travel through walls. You got the Flamberger. It's France. There's the pig. There's just a pig here, and his name's Cochin, and he's awesome. But out of all of these, my absolute favorite has gotta be the barrels. Okay, I know they barely qualify as a weapon because they don't take up a weapon slot and aren't held like a normal weapon, but they're just too funny to ignore. Click to pick them up, click to chuck them. But just see what happens when you throw a barrel at another player. Did you just see that? It just knocked the weapon out of his hand. Need I say more? And finally, something I feel needs to be mentioned is the overall presentation of the game. If you couldn't tell already, the game has a heavy brutalist vibe to it, with majority of the maps occurring in the dingy concrete jungle known as Bubdi, the city in the developer's previous game that shares the same name. That game is also fire, by the way, you should check it out. And being a green goblin guy, running around in this dystopian brutalist megacity, shooting other green goblin guys, tickles my brain in such a surreal way. It's not just the city though, because there's ice sliding maps, UFO farms, the back rooms. It's just the back rooms. Why is it here? All in all, STRAFTAT is a game that I've sunk countless hours into by just getting a few friends together, hopping into a match, and going nuts. But if you're a loner with 0 friends, which I mean, come on, you're watching one of my videos, then you'll be happy to know that I've spent considerable time just playing with randoms, and they're almost always really nice people. And out of all of the games in this video, STRAFTAT is the only free-to-play, so there's no reason not to give it a try. Yo, what's up guys, it's me, Editing Xavier. I just wanted to tag this bit on in the end here, but the developers are also making a new single-player parkour game called Volume. Am I saying that right? And the 2-level beta they released is quite fun, so I'd advise checking that out if you enjoyed STRAFTAT. So there you have it. Those were 3 different movement shooters I heavily recommend if you're trying to get into the genre. As someone who enjoys platformers and never used to play many FPS games, they've slowly become some of my favorite games just in general, and I hope you enjoy them as much as I do. I really wanted to get this video out before Fraud, but because my mic ended up breaking, I really just couldn't do that, so... Anyways, parry that subscribe button, lick that bell, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.